Hello, I'm Sigma. Thank you so much for those who have bought this product, and thanks a lot to those just interested in it as well. Before starting, you'll need to run Blender 3.5 or higher to use the model. The file has been built with cycles in mind, but can be adjusted to work in Eevee just fine. The main focus of this model was utility and customization, with interest in realism as well. This model was designed to have the widest options possible and provide with as much customization as I could fit in without overbearing Blender. It works extremely well in conjunction with DAZ G8 and 8.1 models, more on that later. In certain aspects it's more lacking than other models, like wrinkle generation on the soles and furry options, for which you might find other options you may want to look into more, like 3D scans or custom models. Before jumping straight in, I made tons of chapters so you can instantly look up whatever you might need as fast as possible. Also, in the corner here I will be putting up a sign whenever certain features or part of the tutorial are intended for more experienced Blender users or those that want to experiment more with the model. Without further ado, let's begin! First of all, how to import the model in a scene. There are two options, the hard one and the easy one. The easy one is to use and edit the model in its own blend file. And once done, simply hide the UI collection, select all and copy. Go to whatever other blend file you have and paste them. The hard one would be to be working in another blend file, go to File, Append, Scene, and select the scene. This will give you access to all the functionalities straight there, except for the pose library, which you can import by going again to File, Append, this time Actions, and select them all and append them. You will find them, unfortunately without any order, in your asset browser. As you can see from the menu, first up we got the shapes, and with that come also some extra poses. I used the pose library so that all the bones for certain shapes would work correctly, as opposed to version 1.2. Starting off, these three buttons all have sliders to shape the model at your heart's content. You will see a number before the name of the properties here. That was just to put them in the correct order, as without coding you cannot do that. So, showcase time! Now let's go over some poses. You can access them through the asset browser window. Either select the mesh or the armature, but if you select the armature, make sure to either select all bones or none. This will make it so every bone affected by the saved pose will be changed. You can blend shapes together by either right-clicking on a pose in the asset browser window and click Blend Pose, or by using the Pose Library menu and simply click and hold. You can also select specific bone to affect only those from the Pose Library. If you want to drastically switch between saved pose, remember you can always default back either by going to Unassigned and clicking this option, or selecting all the bones and go to Pose, Clear Transform, All, or by pressing Alt-R, Alt-G and Alt-S in any order. Now a little showcase of the base poses. Now for the next set, what you will be wanting to do is to select a pose, then come back here and manually change the shape key from the menu. The shape key adjusts this pose a little. It was hard to automate this as the pose library isn't supported by drivers, and even if I could connect everything up, it would still result in a possible overcomplication. For ease and common use, I made most of these options be either on or off, but if you want more of a slider like all the other options, you can go into Object Properties and change the type to Float. Now, onto the main options controlling the base mesh material. These are all the settings that control the color alone of the material. In this little showcase, you can see how each option affects the look of the material. If instead of these options you have your own textures you want to use, just a reminder, this model is compatible with all G8 DAZ Textures. You can either connect it here and cut off the other options, or have a fancy way to connect it together with the other options. Reminder that for G8 DAZ Textures you'll have to combine the UVs for the legs and the top part. Just follow this node setup on screen for that. If you're interested to change the vein's disposition, you can change it in this point. Or this point if you want to keep some of the original functionality. Onto the Sweatiness options, you'll be able to change the shine of the model, as well as making small droplets appear. You can use custom roughness specular options to input the values you want. If you want the droplets anywhere else, you can simply put the same geometry node on an object and use that object however you like. For example, you could shrink wrap it against any other part of the body. You can copy and paste the drivers as well to maintain functionality. For the dirtiness options, you'll be able to make the soles dirty, change the pattern, make them completely covered in filth, and even add dirt in the toe prints. You can also change the color as well. Now on to the fun part. You can generate some rubble that will stick on the sole, change its distribution, how many there will be, and the particle size. The fun thing is, it's not just particles. Anything you will place within this collection will be generated on the sole, so really have fun making them squish whatever. If you perhaps want more control over the density or size of different objects, you can go inside the Geometry Nodes workspace and change it accordingly. Just make sure to select the Rubble object to do so. This section here is a rotation randomizer, but you can add another instance on points, and instead of having a collection info node, you can have an object info node, then collect it all with a join geometry node. The last main option settings are related to bump and displacement. The displacement requires the experimental features to be on, so make sure you have them set there. Here, displacement uses the adaptive subdivision of the model to create more detail the closer you get to the model with your camera. This is especially useful for the minute detail of the micro displacement, so make sure to use it only when the camera is very close, otherwise it will look kinda wonky. If you want to add your own bump or normal map to the system, you can add it by connecting the texture to a bump or normal map node and then add it to either here, cutting off all the other options, or connecting it here through a vector math set to minimum to maintain all functionality. To have your own displacement map, simply have your texture connected to a displacement node and connect it either here to cut off other functionality, or connect it here through a vector math set to add to maintain functionality. Now let's check those nails. These options will drastically change and alter the nails, making them disappear, making them out of the skin mesh, or making them close. This other option will change the shape instead. The material properties are all quite straightforward. Now, fluffy options. Here are the settings for the Paw Pad. When the Paw Pad is on, the sweat drops will generate only on the paw pads, as that is how it would work in real life. Although you can click here and make it so it will only generate on the skin instead. Now for the fur options, with this one you can turn the skin into a fur-like material. I suggest using this when being afar, but sticking to skin if you make micro scenes. Although at that point the hair system looks a bit wonky, so I'd suggest to use a scene from the likes of Kitamiya instead, links in the description. The hair system utilizes the new 3.5 system, and as such you can change it to your heart's content in geometry nodes, or add geometry nodes modifiers from the 3.5 essential library in the asset browser. Finally, here are the robot options. If you do do not like the location of the materials, you can simply select the robot mesh and go into edit mode, faces, and select the faces you want to change the materials to, and assign the material here. For the clothing options, all is driven by geometry nodes, shifting through some set vertex groups and deleting geometry. You can activate legwear here, and then cut it down to your preferred length. You can also revert it to create leggings and pants. You can cut the end to make compression socks and revert it to make toe toppers. The toe topper option is only available if you have the compression zone, of course. You can also create stirrups and change the thickness of the clothes. You can create custom options by selecting the clothing mesh, going into edit mode, faces, and select the faces you want to keep or delete. Create a new vertex group and call it however you want. Then go to geometry nodes, then create a separate geometry node and bring out the selection notch. Click here and then search for the vertex group. Then either connect the selection or inverted to here. You can also create a fancy on-off switch like so. Onto the final settings, and these one are a lot. By default the clothing will be made of cotton, but you can change with these options the material. Now let's go over each material and see the option it has. For the cotton material, instead of having a uniform color, you can select an image here in the shader tab and have it be correctly divided with the fibers. In the Pantyhose material, you can regulate the fibers here to create particular patterns and larger stockings. Additionally, here the thickness of the fibers is regulated consistently, but if you want more control, you can remove the drivers or delete this value node here and manually change them however you want. Sometimes the model just doesn't want to work well. It can happen because of the variety of shapes and forms that can clip through one another. Other people might instead want even more options in the model and would like to edit it, so let me showcase. Modify the fit however you like by using the options here. Now click the arrow here and select New Shape from Mix. You will have created a new shape key containing all the modifications you chose beforehand. Make all the other options 0 using the menu. And while selecting the shape key, go into edit mode and change stuff at your art's content. You can also try to get more functionality out of the pre-existing shape keys by changing the range here. Remember that those that are driven by a driver need to have the custom property be changed as well. Or to ease the process, you can just delete the driver. Now, if you want to create an entirely new shape key, you can simply do so here. However, you will find that since the model is made out of many parts, it might be hard to copy the same shape key for the legs, sweaty, rubble, robot, pad, etc. etc. Of course, if you need it for all of those. But in case you needed it, don't fret. Just edit the main legs however you want. Then install the Mesh Data Transfer add-on, link in the description, and the process will be a breeze. Mute all shape keys except the ones that you want to transfer, select another object, go down to Mesh Data Transfer, select Shape Keys, select the Exclude method, select the object you modified here, then transfer mesh data. And voila! It's done! You might possibly need minor adjustments, but better than redoing them all from scratch, eh? If you exported a DAZ G8 or 8.1 model with peculiar shape keys, you can use the same method to transfer those to this model. If you don't have a high-end computer, you may encounter some trouble with this model. That is because of the computing power required to use the adaptive subdivision. There are 3 workarounds for this. Turning it off and simply using normal subdivision. This, however, will not allow you to make micro details. Changing the dicing scale. Increasing the dicing scale will make it so as you zoom in, the model will not subdivide as much. This can be really helpful if you don't want micro details but still want to zoom in a lot. However, if you want micro details, this will not help as much. Go into the Render Properties panel, scroll to Performance, Memory. If Use Styling isn't checked, check it, and try rendering the scene with less and less tiles. This will definitely slow down the render process, but will make it so that the render is divided in smaller chunks that get calculated one after the other instead of all at the same time. It takes longer, but with this you should be able to even get those micro details. We have reached the end. The base model was exported from DAZ 3D, utilizing the female G8.1 model. The shape keys were modeled by hand by me. Most humanoid ones inspired by the options provided by NecDAZ 3D work, links in the descriptions, as well as real-life photos. The materials and many techniques in the model were done by me, often being helped, being inspired, or outright following countless hours of tutorials on the internet. Thank you, Blender community. Additional thanks go to FitiMcFoot, Blender Seraph, and Vorakir, all links in the description, for being patient with me and answering my questions for both version 1.2 and this new and improved 2.0. And finally, thank you so much for watching, thanks to everyone who purchased the model, and thanks for all that follow me and support me each and every day. See ya in the next project. Bye bye!